been seeing a lot of depressing things in the news, okay? So I want to talk to you a little bit today about how to protect your mental health while building a business. Now, I know that, people probably look at me and go like, well, what do you know about mental health, Sarah? Like, I'm not a therapist, obviously, right? But a little known fact, I'm actually a licensed pastoral marriage counselor. So I do have a lot of that background. I'm also a certified life coach. And so instead of talking really about mental health today, since I'm not a mental health professional, I want to talk to you actually about mental wellness and what mental wellness really means, okay? Mental wellness is not focusing on cognitive ability or cognitive disability, right? It's focusing on things like, your ability to have relationships, your emotional state, right? Coming back to what Bree was saying earlier, like it's your ability to deal with an even keel, right? Emotionally and mentally, an even keel to deal with life, okay? So I want to just share my own story with this and kind of why I feel like this is such an important subject. So for those of you who don't know my story, when I was 18 years old, my sister Emily, that's her on the screen there, she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time, I had already had my side hustle for, I guess at that point, 4 years, right? All through high school, I was cleaning houses for my parents' friends. And when my parents came to me and said, hey, Emily's been given this diagnosis, I had just turned 18. I had just graduated high school. I had a partial scholarship to go to Portland University in the fall. And, I was just kind of enjoying life at that point. And, I was a dancer. I was doing all kinds of activities. And when my parents came to me, my number one thought at that moment was, I need to not be a burden to them. Like, it's time for me to grow up. It's time for me to start adulting, right? So I moved out on my own. And I looked at my life and I went, you know what? I can't ask my parents to pay for my college tuition. I had a partial scholarship. They were going to pay the difference. And I was like, there's no way they can do that. We were selling our house to afford medical treatment for Emily, right? So I was like, yeah, I can't do that. So I put my college plans on hold and I looked at what kind of job I could get. I actually went online and went, back in those days, this is like the MySpace days, right? I went to MySpace and like asked all my friends, like, hey, does anybody know of a job I could get for more than minimum wage? I was basically a high school student. I never had a job before. I just had my little side hustle, right? I couldn't find a job that would pay me enough to actually have my own apartment and be self-sustaining. So I made the decision at that moment to build my side hustle into a full business. So over the course of the next 6 months, I built my small but mighty business, right? It was called At Ease Home Help. And I, did house cleaning basically for people. And I built it into a 5-figure business. I hired my fellow high school students to do the cleaning for me. I did the marketing and sales. I didn't even know I was supposed to set aside for taxes, right? Like I had no clue what I was doing, you guys. But over the course of those 6 months, I built this business, okay? And at that time, my sister was dying. Okay, my sister eventually went on hospice care and passed away. My parents started fighting and then eventually divorced during those 6 months. My boyfriend cheated on me, crashed my car and lied to me and then left, okay? And then at the end of the 6 months, my dog died. So you can just imagine, right? This is me. I'm 18 years old, okay? I have a 5-figure business that I just built from scratch with like my blood, sweat, and tears over the course of 6 months. And my life is falling apart, okay? So at that time, I had no clue. I had no support system. My parents were a wreck. My friends were losers, to be totally honest. They had no idea what to do with me, right? That's the honest truth. Like they didn't know how to help, right? And so their solution was to just label me as depressing and avoid me, right? And I'm sure I was very depressing at that time because I was stressed out. I had a full-time business. My mom had a baby about 3 months before Emily got diagnosed. So I had a baby sister as well as Emily. And one day my mom shows up on my doorstep and hands me the baby and says, I can't take care of her right now, and flies out of the country with Emily to go chase some, cancer cure in another country. So I'm like a single mom with a baby who's not my own, right? In this apartment I can barely afford with my 5-figure cleaning business. And I'm taking this baby like out on jobs with me, right? I had no idea what I was doing. And mentally, I was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I was a wreck. Okay. There were days when I was buying like those $1 frozen food meal. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're like 99 cents, right? And have like the nutritional value of, I don't know, a teaspoon, and I was eating those 3 meals a day, right? And I could barely afford that. That was like $3 a day. It was my budget for food because I had to feed the baby. I actually started to get gray hair that year, and I've had to dye my hair ever since. So, nutrition was a mess. My sleep was shot because my sister the baby was not sleeping through the night yet, right? And here I was trying to build a business. So I know what it's like to be a mess and try to run a business. Okay. I guess that was really the point of my message here is like, if you are looking at, God, the thing that happened in Texas yesterday with the shooting. And if you're looking at that, if you're looking at the stock market crashing, you're watching your 401k dive this week and you're feeling an emotional disaster right now, I wanted to kind of show you guys some resources and tools that I found at that time and in the years since that have helped me to maintain my mental state and my emotional, my spiritual state while building my business. Because at that time I had nothing. I had no idea what to do with all of the emotions I was experiencing. I was barely 18 years old, and at the time, everybody told me like, well, why don't you just medicate, like go see a psychiatrist and get on something. And to me, that was terrifying. And I didn't really even understand why, but there's something in the universe, there's something telling me like, that is not the solution. I think part of it was the fact that my best friend had come out of the closet essentially and admitted that he was a heroin addict. And none of us had any idea. Like, we thought he was such a cool guy, and here he was admitting he was, addicted to heroin. So I was very scared of drugs at that time, and I had never taken a drug in my life. I had never smoked pot. To this day, I've never smoked pot. Like, I've never done anything. And so to me, drugging just didn't seem, the medication just did not seem like the right solution. Now, if you are on a psychotropic medication right now and it's helping you, please don't take this as judgment. Like, my hat is off to you. I think that psychotropic medications have a time and place. They're symptom solutions, right? They address specific symptoms that you're experiencing. And if that's working for you, great. But I wanted to offer this to you guys because there are so many other solutions out there. And the more I dug in and the more I started to understand how the current medical profession addresses mental health and how wrong it really is, and why we're seeing this constant uptick in mental health statistics when allegedly the mental health profession has quote unquote handled it. Like, clearly there's something wrong there, right? If you know statistics like I do, like, if the thing you're supposed to be fixing is going the wrong direction and you're piling more on and it continues to get worse, clearly that's not the right answer, right? So this all just comes from my own journey, okay? When my sister passed away, I actually left. I sold my business. I sold my car. I got rid of my apartment, and I took everything I owned, put it in a suitcase, and I went backpacking through Mexico. So on the screen, you can see that's Ruth Lechuga. Lechuga means lettuce. And she was a really cute little lady who I met online. And she had a bed and breakfast in Mexico City, and she offered to let me stay with her while I was traveling around. I was, 19 years old at this time, 5 foot tall white chick, couldn't speak Spanish, right? So like, not the safest person to go backpacking through Mexico by myself, but that's what I did. I was like looking for answers, and that's where I found them. So I was staying with Ruth, traveling around Mexico during the day, just doing whatever I wanted, living off of my savings from my business, right? From the sale of my business. And that's when I started to really look into this mental health thing, right? Like, what is it that solves depression, what solves anxiety, what actually can restore your mental wellness, right? Because believe me, I was depressed. Like there were definitely moments when I had thoughts of like, well, this is not, I don't think this life is for me. Like, I don't know what this whole adulting thing was supposed to be like, but it's not what Disney promised and I don't want it, you know? So since that time, I've become a licensed pastoral counselor. I've become a certified life coach. I'm now an internationally acclaimed author. And I wanted to show you guys what I learned while I was doing all of this research, right? Instead of going to college, I basically went to the College of Life and I traveled through a third world country and saw true desperate, right? Truly desperate people, truly depressed people, people who have way more right to be depressed about their lives than even I did with all that I had experienced, right? Some people who had really seen human rights violations like I had never seen before, okay? So one thing that I want to make a point about here is I was looking for non-drug solutions, like I said. And if you guys are interested in this, stay tuned. I'm going to tell you all about what I found. But this is a quote taken from the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. You guys know what advocate I am for human rights of all types, whether it be anti-racism, anti-trafficking, like all of that. But it also comes down to misdiagnosis and the constant drugging of society as a solution to mental health, which is it's not a solution. Okay, I'm going to show you why in a minute. But psychiatrists claim their drugs save lives, right? That's what they claim. They say you're suicidal, you're having mental health crisis, we're going to drug it, it's going to make it better. According to their own studies, these psychotropic drugs that they give you can double your risk of suicide. Okay, they cause what's called suicidal ideation. If you look up the definition of suicidal ideation, ideation means an idea. It's causing you to think suicidal thoughts, to have suicidal ideas. That's what psychotropic drugs do. It's considered a side effect, but a side effect is just an effect that they didn't mean to cause. That's all the definition of a side effect is. So it's basically an actual effect of the drug, right? So I'm very glad I never got on these, but I want to share with you some of the examples of non-drug solutions, okay? So when we approach anything health related, there's 4 types of treatment. Whether you're talking about diabetes, you're talking about mental health, you're talking about, I don't know, you got a hangnail, right? Like anything health related, there are 4 types of treatment. There's preventative treatment. Preventative is when we cause it to not happen in the first place. Right? So there's things that you can do to prevent a hangnail, right? There are things you can do to prevent yourself from getting diabetes later on in life, right? There are things you can do to prevent yourself from having a mental health crisis, okay? So preventative means wellness practices that help avoid a health issue, okay? Wellness practices that help avoid a health issue. We'll talk about some examples in a minute. Then you have restorative treatment. Restorative treatments are approaches that reinstate wellness by addressing root causes. So what's the cause of your hangnail? Well, right? Good. If you're going to restore your finger to proper health, you would pluck that thing, right? Or whatever, and wrap it up and let it heal, right? Good. That healing would be a restorative measure, right? When it comes to mental health, the biggest issue I see with our current mental health crisis is that there's no attempt in most cases to apply restorative treatments. They're just doing symptom relief. What do the drugs do? Drugs are, right, medication, psychotropic medication, like, Ativan and all this other stuff they give you it's treating the symptoms, not the root cause. So let's take an example of that, okay? Let's take an example here. I've been through a divorce, okay? I don't know if you've been through a divorce, but it's painful. No matter whose fault it was or who caused it or who applied for it, whatever, it's still painful. So if I'm experiencing depression and anxiety about my future because I'm going through a divorce, how is a drug going to help that? It's going to maybe help with the symptoms I'm experiencing, but is it going to get in at the root cause? Is it going to stop me from being divorced? No. Is it going to help me figure out what relationship skill I lack? No, right? It's not going to actually resolve the root cause of my depression. right? That's right. Shawnee is correct. It's just numbing it, right? That's all it's doing. Just like when you take a painkiller. If I'm lying on the street because a truck has just run me over and I'm bleeding out, excuse me, I should have like trigger warnings here, but like if I'm like bleeding, giving me a painkiller is not going to stop the bleeding, right? No, you need a tourniquet, like put my leg back together and then give me a painkiller, right? So that's the biggest issue that I see with what's going on in the mental health space is take this child, this not even child, this 18-year-old boy who went into an elementary school in Texas this week and shot and killed 15 people. Well, he was on psychotropic medication. Okay, psychotropic medication that probably caused suicidal and violent ideation. Ideation meaning thoughts. He had feelings and thoughts of wanting to hurt others and himself because of the medication, not despite it. And that's what I think a lot of people don't recognize is that the drugs numb your feelings. That includes the feeling of guilt. Okay, it's taking away a person's ability to judge. Right? You ever been on heavy drugs like morphine? It takes away your ability to judge. You say stupid things, right? I don't know about you, but I was like, blah, like muttering, right? Like when you get on drugs, it numbs. So instead of numbing and just having that be the total solution, we should have restorative treatment. And there are plenty of very effective restorative treatments, but they aren't talked about because they're not pushed by the companies that are making billions of dollars, trillions of dollars every single year on psychotropic medication, right? So big pharma, big tech has invested now in big pharma, right? Facebook now owns pharmaceutical companies, or at least stock in pharmaceutical companies, right? And so I'm not going into this as like a big conspiracy theory. That's not my point. I'm not like, oh, the whole world and the government's out to get us. I don't think that's actually true. I think a small percentage of people are unethical, and that small percentage, unfortunately, sometimes controls money because money is easily manipulated, right? But at the end of the day, we're not getting to the root cause of what's going on. So use the medication as a symptom relief while you solve the root cause, okay? That's the solution that any well-trained medical professional will tell you, right? If you walk into an ER and you go, hey, I'm bleeding, they're not gonna be like, well, here, take this painkiller, come home in 8 weeks, come back in 8 weeks and let me know if you still have any blood left. Like they're not gonna do that, right? They're gonna practice restorative first. So symptom relief is methods to minimize health symptoms. Shawnee, that is just sad. I am so sorry that you experienced that. Like I said, I know that I'm very lucky that someone, right, in this universe told me not to medicate at that time when I was going through that mental health crisis. I did not ever take any of those drugs. And I'm so lucky that I knew or was called to look for non-drug solutions, right? And they are out there. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about them in a minute. But I want you guys to think with this as business owners, because as business owners, we will face stresses that other people don't necessarily face, right? It's important to know these things. So the fourth type of treatment is overcare avoidance, right? And just like Shawnee was mentioning, it says ways to avoid unnecessary and potentially harmful treatment. There isn't very much oversight in the mental health space right now. There's very little oversight. There's very little care for overcare avoidance. So this is something that we as patients, we as people, as citizens have to practice ourselves, right? We have to practice it ourselves because unfortunately, there isn't that oversight right now. I'm hoping through education and the things that we do, we can create some. And I think cchr.org, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, you guys know how big I am on human rights. That is a wonderful organization that's doing a lot of work to try to create oversight in the mental health space. But let's talk about this. When is symptom relief considered ethical? In any other medical profession besides mental health, symptom relief is only considered ethical for triage and hospice. So what's triage? Triage is the care on an emergency basis, right? So when you walk into the ER, they're going to practice symptom relief, right? They're going to inject you with painkillers quickly to get that symptom relief, right? But once the emergency is over, they're going to stop treating your symptoms and they're going to start looking for your root causes. So this is what's wrong with most mental health treatment these days, is that it ends at symptom relief, and that's not ethical, right? And for hospice, what's hospice? Hospice is when a person is at the end of life. Like my sister, when we recognized that there was no going back, this 10-year-old girl went on hospice care and she was well cared for the rest of her short life, right? That is hospice. Hospice, it is appropriate to do symptom relief because it's impossible at this time to actually restore health, right? Maybe someday we'll be cool like Star Trek and be able to restore people's health indefinitely or freeze them until they can be. But right now we have hospice, and during hospice and triage are the only times in every profession but the mental health space, it's the only time it's considered ethical to only treat symptoms, okay? I talk about this inside my book called The CEO Mindset. If you guys want a copy of that, I'll absolutely send one to you guys for free as my clients. If you're not a client and you're watching the retraining here, feel free to comment below CEO and I'll make sure you get the link to purchase a copy. You can buy it anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, etc., iBooks, etc. Okay, so here are just some of the examples of preventative health, mental health, right? Preventative mental health that I found in my research. Okay, these are the things that I used to restore my own mental health, or rather to, now that I am restored, to prevent further mental health crises, right? And it's also talked about, again, inside my book, The CEO Mindset. So the first one is education. Believe it or not, educating yourself about mental wellness can actually improve your mental wellness. Who knew? So when you actually educate yourself on what the mind is, right? A great book for this is the book Dianetics. It talks about, it's called The Modern Science of Mental Health, this book, and it talks about how the mind is actually structured. And when you understand how the mind is structured, it makes it easier to control your own mental wellness, right? Because you understand what's going on between two ears, right? So that's one step that can actually help prevent a mental health crisis. The second one, and this is really a key question that I have used ever since then, is anytime I start to feel overwhelmed or feel like something is in my life is spinning out of my control, okay? Because we all like to have control. We like to hope that our life is not just fate, that there is someone controlling where we're going, whether it's us or God, right? We hope that someone is steering this stinking ship, right? And when I start to feel like things are wildly spinning out of control, whether it be in my business or in life, or I feel overwhelmed, I ask myself this question: what skill set would put this outcome under my control? Okay, I'm going to blow this up so you guys can read it because I know it's really tiny. What skill set would put this outcome under my control? So whatever the outcome is that I want, right? If it's, I want my business to grow, what skill set would put that outcome under my control? If it's in my relationship and I don't like the way the conversation is going, what skill set would put this outcome under my control, right? What skill set would allow me to have better communication with my husband? What skill set would allow me to get more leads in my business? It applies to anything, you guys. And it's focusing on what we can control rather than allowing our mind to drift towards all the things in life that we can't control, okay? So that can be a really powerful mental preventative. And then the third one is recreation. This falls under self-care, taking a walk, taking vacation, going to the movies, spending time with your loved ones, prayer, right? Like anything that is not work, okay? Think of stress like a glass of water. Have you ever held a glass of water out in front of you, right? You hold it and you hold it. Here, let's see, I'll get something. You hold this thing, right? And at first, for a couple minutes, it's okay, right? Maybe even, because this thing's pretty light, maybe even for like an hour, I would be okay. But after an hour, I start to really feel the stress, right, on my arm. Now, what's interesting was if I put that down every 10 minutes and then I pick it back up again, then I put it down for another 10 minutes and I pick it back up, I can go way past a cumulative hour by resting occasionally, okay? Same thing happens with the stresses up here, right? If you are freaking out about something that's going on in your business, you're freaking out about the stock market, you're freaking out about what's going on in Texas, or whatever other bad news or stressors you have in your life, if you can find a way to capture that attention back and put it on something pleasurable for a few minutes, right? Even if it's just a couple minutes, it does not have to be a lengthy period of time. But if you can stop and put your attention on something that frees up, right? Pleasure frees up attention units. Then we can actually hold that water bottle much longer than we could have if we tried to do it all at once. So just remember that when you start to really feel that stress, it's put it down, right? Even sometimes in my business, I'll be stressed out and I just have to go for a walk. I used to just go for a walk around the block. Now my block is 15 acres, so I don't quite go for a whole block anymore, but I'll walk to the end of the street and back, and then come back and try to face this problem again, right? So just remember to put the glass down occasionally, okay? That is a really good preventative, and it helps you to not feel so stressed out. It helps you to avoid a mental health crisis for yourself, okay? Avoid burnout. Now, what do we do when we actually get to that point? If you get to the point where you are depressed, you feel triggered, you're actually experiencing a mental health crisis of some kind, right? What are some of the things I used to restore myself? Well, I'm going to show you. First and foremost, I don't know if you know this, but studies show that 25% of all mental dysfunction is caused by or significantly influenced by physical issues. So at that time, I had a friend who took me to a doctor, just a regular family doctor, not a psychiatrist or, therapist, just took me to a medical doctor and got me a checkup. And sure enough, I found out I had hormone imbalance. I had all kinds of stuff that was affecting my mental state. Okay. Now, obviously, nutrition and fixing my hormones did not bring my sister back to life. It did not make my boyfriend not cheat on me. Like, there were a lot of other root causes as well. But my ability to deal with those things was being negatively influenced by my body. So now, every time, you guys probably have noticed this if you've been my client for a while, right? Anytime I have a client who starts to go into grief, they start crying, they start getting overwhelmed by their business, and I can see that it's maybe not totally caused by the situation or circumstances. It seems like their emotions might be outweighing the real circumstances. I ask them, when was the last time you had a full night's sleep? How much sleep did you get last night? What have you eaten today? And usually I would say 9 times out of 10, the person's like, well, I got 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I drank all night last night, or like they're hungover, they're hungry, they haven't slept, they ate only a donut today. These things do matter, right? They affect our cognitive function. So keeping your body in good health, right? Exercising regularly, getting plenty of sleep, even if you have to take something like melatonin to knock yourself out, right? So you can sleep, getting that sleep and actually taking proper care of your body can make a big difference. Because of the mental struggles I've had, and the crisis that I had at that time, I don't work late anymore. I love working until about 8 or 9 p.m. and then I sleep. I sleep at least 8 or 9 hours a night, every single night. And if I don't deal with stressful things the next day. I refuse, because I know myself. I know that I have a history, right? I have a history of loss and mental health issues, and I don't allow myself to go down that road. So it's also just taking personal responsibility for yourself and the effect you have on your clients, the effect you have on your business when you're not doing well, right? The second thing that I used, because I come from an art background, right? My father is a sculptor. My stepmom was a professional dancer and still teaches classes to this day. I was on the dance team and I danced for 15 years. I'm an author. I love young adult fantasy. I write stories. I published, right? My sister is an artist. Art therapy has always been a big deal in our family. My father is a multi-million-dollar business owner, right? And growing up, I watch him. He dances. He does swing and salsa and, foxtrot and tango and all these other, right, like types of dance. And he's actually done competitive dancing and things like that. And he uses that as a stress reliever in his business, right? So art therapy is actually a very powerful strategy for keeping yourself motivated, keeping yourself, right, like getting out of your head a little bit. Definitely recommend it. The other one that I found, which I think has had the biggest impact on me, and again, I'm not trying to get all religious on people, so you guys know me, that's not a part of my brand. I don't care what your religious beliefs are. You are more than welcome to be a part of the inner circle in the business lounge, whether you are atheist or Christian or Islamic or whatever, right? But for me personally, spiritual counseling has probably made the biggest difference in my mental health. I recommend, if you are going to go with therapy, look for therapies that have a proven track record. Okay. Don't try things that are like experimental and stuff, like when you're already not doing well, right? That's not really a good idea. And then just look for something that aligns with your belief system. Okay. The worst thing I've ever experienced is trying to deal with a mental health issue I was having, or with a limiting belief I was having, and trying to do it with someone who was pushing beliefs on me that I didn't have. That just made my anxiety go out the roof, right? So definitely don't recommend that. But anyway, so these are the tools that I have found to be useful. Thank you so much, you guys, for staying on live. I hope this has been helpful for you. I know that there are a lot of stressors that are happening right now, and just in general in life as business owners, we're going to deal with this stuff. So it's important to have tools that you can reach for. And yes, it's okay to go for the symptom relief if you need to, right? It's, every once in a while, I'll go home and I'll have a drink. Like, it's okay to deal with symptom relief occasionally, but don't forget to address the root cause. Don't forget to educate yourself on how the mind truly works, and deal with the root causes that are underlying the depression, underlying the anxiety, underlying the limiting beliefs and the negative stories and the negative inner dialogue that we deal with. Okay. It's important to deal with those things, and they have a time and place in your business. Okay. So thank you so much again, you guys, for coming on live. I know this is a little bit of a long one, but I will see you guys next week. All right. Have a great long weekend. I hope you guys have some good plans. Oh yeah. And Top Gun. Don't give me any spoilers. I'm going to go see it. All right. I'll see you guys. Bye.